people in the banking and financial sector, many of whom are just on their way home to where you are in Central.
Yes, indeed. A spokesperson of the Hong Kong Banking Employees Association said their union is not happy with HSBC's move today. They said the large redundancies will definitely have an effect on the Hong Kong's economy in general. Well, they also said HSBC is not just a bank, it's also a very big employer. And today's move will definitely affect the company's morale, and also add to the heavy workload of the staff here at HSBC. Now, we've tried speaking with some of the staff here to get a feel of what they think about the issue, but many of them were reluctant to say anything.
I have no comment.
There was little HSBC staff members could say this evening after they learned that 3,000 of them will lose their jobs over the next 3 years. Though there were those who were confident their good performance will save their jobs. The redundancies account for around 8% of the banking giant's manpower in Hong Kong and are part of what the bank calls its Global Organizational Effectiveness Program. In a letter to staff, HSBC's Chief Executive Officer for the Asia-Pacific region, Peter Wong, said the bank's cost efficiency ratio in Hong Kong is below the group's target. He says for all of HSBC's strengths as an organization, it can be needlessly complex and bureaucratic, and the bank needs to remove what he calls unnecessary layers of approval in order to reduce costs. The bank will be focusing on its support functions as it restructures to reduce management layers and improve efficiency. Wong says it is difficult at this stage to know exactly how many roles will be reduced. But for the estimated 3,000 people who will lose their jobs, the bank will provide redeployment opportunities, outplacement services, recruitment support, and counseling services for those who need help. The Hong Kong redundancies are just the beginning of the bank's restructuring. There will be similar moves at HSBC bureaus in Brazil, Canada, Mexico, and the United States. Secretary for Financial Services and the Treasury Chen Kang-keung, meanwhile, urged HSBC to minimize the number of job cuts in Hong Kong. He also brushed aside concerns that Hong Kong's economy may be dwindling, saying that our financial outlook remains very promising. Priscilla Ng, TVB News.
Well, the move is believed to affect about 8% of HSBC's manpower locally. But in past hours or so, we haven't seen anyone here leave with boxes, because it's said that the sacking will be a very gradual process over the next 3 years. Well, that's all from me here. Back to you in the studio.
Thank you very much, Andrew. A cycling group has proposed to build a cycle path along the Hong Kong harbourfront. The route will span 16 kilometres, connecting Kennedy Town with Hang Fa Tsuen in the Eastern District. Andrew Lau again.
If you are a keen cyclist on Hong Kong Island, the chances are you'll have to go to Kowloon or the New Territories for a good ride, because there just aren't many decent cycle paths on the island. The Hong Kong Cycling Alliance has proposed to the Harbourfront Commission a cycling path that will stretch from Kennedy Town in the west, along the seafront in the Western District, past the piers in Central, to the typhoon shelter in Causeway Bay, and ending in Hang Fa Tsuen in the Eastern District. The route is 16 kilometers long. There are many attractions along the way, including the Western Wholesale Food Market, the Western Harbour Crossing, the Sun Yat-sen Memorial Park, and the Noonday Gun in Causeway Bay. The Hong Kong Cycling Alliance said the harbourfront cycle route can not only become a transport artery on Hong Kong Island, but can also allow tourists to appreciate Hong Kong's most highly regarded asset, the Victoria Harbour. But the Alliance also pointed out that there's little space along some parts of the harbourfront, so it may be difficult to make sure that the cycle path can be at least 3.5 meters wide to comply with Transport Department regulations. Chan Chi-keung of the Hong Kong Cycling Association said the lack of facilities for cyclists in general can make it tricky, if not dangerous, for enthusiasts to get from their homes to the cycle route. What the administration needs to do, he says, is to provide parking space for bikes and encourage people to use their bikes as a means of transport. Commissioner for Transport Joseph Lai, meanwhile, says the government will closely study the proposal and consider its feasibility. Andrew Lau, TVB News.
Overseas now, and a powerful bomb blast outside the High Court in New Delhi has killed at least 11 people and injured 59. Indian authorities are calling it a terrorist attack, and a Bangladeshi-affiliated militant group, Harkat-ul-Jihad Islami, has claimed responsibility. Jamison Wong has more.
Devastation outside the High Court in New Delhi. The bomb went off this morning near a line of more than 100 people waiting to get passes for entry to the court building to have their cases heard. It was placed in a briefcase outside the High Court. Today was one of the busiest days of the week when the court hears public interest petitions.
I heard a loud bang. When I turned around, after getting the consciousness and all, I found that 50 to 60 people were lying on the floor.
Other witnesses said there was smoke everywhere. The blast shook the courthouse and sent lawyers and judges fleeing outside. The High Court is an appeals court below the country's Supreme Court. It's located not far from Parliament and the Prime Minister's office. Today's attack came less than 2 months after near-simultaneous triple bomb blasts in Mumbai claimed 24 lives. India's financial hub was also the target of terror attacks in 2008 that killed 166. New Delhi is now on high alert following today's blast.
The objective of terrorist groups is to strike fear and to destabilize the country. We are clear in our mind that there is no cause that will justify terrorist acts. We must remain resolute and united. We must not show any vacillation. We shall never be intimidated by terrorist groups. We are determined to track down the perpetrators of this horrific crime and bring them to justice.
Jamison Wong, TVB News.
The United States has urged Niger to detain senior members of Muammar Gaddafi's regime who are believed to have crossed from Libya into the country in an armed convoy. Meanwhile, after days of on and off negotiations, rebel fighters are poised to enter the town of Bani Walid, one of the last cities still under loyalist control. What was once described as the Mad Max militia in the early days of the war now looks more like a well-organized army on the verge of victory. And after their impressive show of force, by late yesterday, it appeared a deal had been struck that would allow rebel fighters to enter a pro-Gaddafi stronghold without bloodshed. But then negotiators from the town itself were attacked by Gaddafi forces.
The representative of tribes, which is today were with us, negotiate with us here in mosque. When they come back in Bin Walid, the Gaddafi's forces shot of them.
As a consequence, rebel forces say the outcome in Bani Walid is unlikely to be peaceful. The town near Tripoli is one of the few in Libya where pro-Gaddafi forces still maintain a significant presence and a challenge to the future stability of the new government. The other areas of resistance are Gaddafi's birthplace of Sirte and the desert town of Saba in the south. The events came as reports emerged of huge convoys of Gaddafi loyalists fleeing into neighboring Niger across hundreds of miles of desert. Despite the fact that the rebel flag is flying outside the Libyan embassy in the Nigerian capital Niamey, most locals seem mostly happy to host the fallen strongman. He can come and go as he pleases, said this man. But the United States